Spiritual Director here, and we're so delighted that you decided to join us for our Sunday celebration. We are a progressive, inclusive spiritual community dedicated to teaching spiritual tools to transform personal lives and help make a world that works for everyone. We welcome you no matter where you happen to be on your own spiritual path. With me this morning to do our invocation and reading is Reverend Dr. Linda Rapond. Her husband, Walter Carlisle, one of our practitioners, is holding high watch at home. And our musician this morning is Heather Hutton, who now has our opening song. Heather?
Good morning, everyone. This is a song by Michael Stillwater. It's called Give Our Love Away, and it's recorded on his album called Oh Great Spirit. We come here to laugh, and we come here to sing, and we come here to remember we're in everything. Yes, we come here to love, and we come here to live, and we come here to remember that we came here to give our love away. We come here to give our love away. We come here to laugh, and we come here to sing, and we come here to remember we're in everything. Yes, we come here to love, and we come here to live, and we come here to remember that we came here to give our love away. We came here to give our love away. Yes, we came here to give our love away. Oh, we came here to give our love away.
Let's just begin this morning, as we do every Sunday, with a prayer. And turning within, recognizing that by whatever name you call it, the infinite presence, life itself, love itself, God, that presence is all that's happening right now. In, around, through, and as us. That presence is palpably present right here, right now. And so I give thanks for this day, for this time together, knowing that that presence is guiding and directing all that occurs in this service. I give thanks for each person, wherever they are, that is joining us today. And know that each of us are fed, our souls are fed, and that which our soul is seeking is absolutely found and received. So I bless Reverend Kimberly in her message. I bless Heather Hutton in her music. I bless every person who is making this service possible here today. And I give thanks for it unfolding perfectly in the mind of God. And so we simply rest and allow it to unfold in this time and place. Thank you, God. And so it is. I have a reading I want to share today. This is Martin Luther King weekend, perhaps never needed as much as right now. And this reading is the acceptance speech when Dr. King received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. So kind of hauntingly accurate, almost 60 years later. These words really ring deeply true to me today. He said, "I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. This is why right temporarily defeated, is stronger than evil triumphant. I believe that even amid today's martyr bursts and whining bullets, there is still hope for a brighter tomorrow. I believe that wounded justice, lying prostrate on the blood-flowing streets of our nation, can be lifted from this dust of shame to reign supreme among the children of men. I have the audacity to believe that people everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education and culture for their minds, and dignity, equality, and freedom for their spirits. I believe that what self-centered men have torn down, men other-centered can build up. I still believe that one day mankind will bow before the altars of God and be crowned triumphant over war and bloodshed, and nonviolent redemptive good will proclaim the rule of the land. As the Bible says, "And the lion and the lamb shall lie down together, and every man shall sit under his own vine and fig tree, and none shall be afraid." I still believe that we shall overcome. This faith can give us courage to face the uncertainties of the future. It will give our tired feet new strength as we continued our forward stride toward the city of freedom. When our days become dreary with low hovering clouds, and our nights become darker than 1,000 midnights, we will know that we are living in the creative turmoil of a genuine civilization struggling to be born.
So appropriate for right now. Thank you, Dr. Linda, and thank you, Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King. We go back now to Heather Hutton.
So I wrote this song several years ago around a poem that touches me every time I hear it. I bet a lot of you have heard this poem before. It's by Hafiz. And it goes, "Even after all this time, the sun never says you owe me. Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole world." It touches me every time I hear that poem. Here's the song. Even after all this time, the sun never says you owe me. Even after all this time, the sun never says you owe me. It's shining bright on everyone, no matter where they are or who they've been or whether or not they've sinned. Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole world. Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole world. Eliyahu, Even after all this time, the sun never says you owe me. You owe me. Oh, even after all this time, the sun never says you owe me. It never stops to take a break through times of smiles or great heartache. It's never done with us. Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole world. Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole world.
Look what happens with a love like that. And we each are a love like that, yes? Our theme for this month of January is Out with the Old, In with the True. And I've chosen for the title of my message this morning, How Big is Your Container? It's kind of ironic, I think, in a way, because if you're like me, I think most of us are feeling like our container has shrunk this year. We've been contained and constrained, sheltering in place, unable to do many of the things we normally do, including travel or spend the holidays with family or even come together on Sunday to have church together. So, yeah, it feels like our boundaries have come in on themselves. I have a friend who went to the doctor recently, and, they ask a series of questions to make sure it's safe to let you come in. And they asked him if he'd been out of the country for the last 2 weeks. During the last 2 weeks, he goes, heck, I haven't been out of my house in the last 2 weeks. And for many of us, that's pretty much the size of it. So it's important in our philosophy to remember that despite the conditions that are going on at the moment, we always have a factor that affects those, that we are not at the mercy of conditions. It's the other way around, that our consciousness creates. This is basics, science of mind stuff. We always have the ability to expand our consciousness. And I think, with the pandemic and the limitations placed upon us because of that, some of the fear that's going around because of that, the slowness in getting vaccines out, and now with the violence that we witnessed at our state capitol last week, more fear. It's natural for some fear to be circulating. So again, we can feel that constriction. And so I want to go back to basics in terms of how it affects, our consciousness affects our personal lives and how our collective consciousness affects the life of our nation and of our world. So the fact is, this universe is infinite potential. There are no limits to what we can experience or to the good that spirit, consciousness, God has in store for us. And conditions, as they exist right now, are completely malleable, changeable, as we change our perspective, as we change the thought seeds that we set into the law. We get to fashion our lives by our thinking. But our thoughts conform to the mold. So our founder, Ernest Holmes, our conditions of our life conform to the mold of our thoughts. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, has a great analogy that I've always appreciated in the Science of Mind textbook for this. He talks about this universal medium, the unformed substance that we call the law. He says it's kind of like pig iron in an iron foundry. The pig iron is melted down in a hot furnace till it turns to liquid. And he says the pig iron doesn't know or care what form it eventually takes. It just conforms to the mold into which it is poured. And much the same way, our thoughts form the mold to which the law responds and fills, thus creating the conditions in our lives. Holmes talks about holding up the cup of acceptance to the infinite. And the shape of that cup and the size of that cup determine what it is we experience. And again, this applies to every area of our lives, what we want to experience in our health, our abundance, our wealth, our relationships, how harmonious they are, our creative self-expression. And it also applies to our collective life, which I think now is so very important. You heard Reverend Dr. Linda read that reading from MLK's acceptance speech for the Nobel Peace Prize, and what a cup he held up. What a huge container he was willing to think of and hold and believe it could happen. And really now, almost 60 years later, it hasn't completely happened. But he set the seeds in motion that I think are still growing today. I know they're still growing today. So let me go back to one more analogy in terms of this cup that we're asked to hold up, that we're allowed to hold up. Ever go to the ocean? I used to live in Southern California in Huntington Beach, and I would go to the beach and look out over that ocean, and it just seemed like it went on forever. It seemed like it was infinite. And there's a wonderful writer, Emmett Fox, who made the analogy between the ocean and this unformed substance that awaits our creative command, our thought. He said, when we go down to the seashore, we find what is practically an unlimited supply of ocean water. He said billions and billions of gallons. I imagine it's trillions or quadrillions or whatever's next of gallons of water in that ocean. He says the amount that you can carry away will depend on the vessel with which you have provided yourself. If you take a 10-gallon can, you can get 10 gallons of ocean water. If you take only a pint pot, you can take only a pint. And if you take only a thimble down, that's the amount you can take away. And he ends by saying, so it is with divine abundance. The only limit is the limit of our capacity to receive. So as always, I think I'm giving this message for myself as much as anyone else right now. I want us not to limit our understanding and our mold of what we're holding up and what we know is possible. It's so easy to feel constricted, and I don't want us to go there. That doesn't mean we ignore conditions. We have to accept conditions and respond to conditions. I talked last week about every experience in my life and in your life is the perfect curriculum. It's the perfect set of circumstances to grow us. And I know that the same is true for our collective lives. Everything that's happening right now is an invitation to grow us. It's all that is unfolding for our awakening. And I think when I remember that, it helps me not get constricted, fearful, or angry about the events that are taking place right now. In fact, everything that needs to be healed is coming up for healing. We're seeing the shadow side, as we've talked about before. So I want to talk a bit about not only holding up that big container, having a huge vision of what is possible, but also of how we might marinate in love. So let me go back first to this idea of the big container. Martin Luther King, we all know his I Have a Dream speech. Huge container of what he held up. And I would like to point out that that legacy, as we celebrate Martin Luther King Day this Monday, has birthed other people who have had big containers that they're holding up, big molds. And one, I believe, is Stacey Abrams from Georgia. You think about, she was defeated in her gubernatorial run in 2018, a black woman in Georgia running for governor, almost won, but didn't quite. And her response, rather than shrinking back and limiting her idea of what was possible, was to start an organization called Fair Fight, to start a massive, massive move to register disenfranchised voters, not only in Georgia, but in 20 other states in our nation. I believe the number was 800,000 new voters were registered for the recent presidential election, and at least another 70,000 after that election for the governor's race. And we all know the governor's race resulted in the election of the first Jewish senator from Georgia, John Ossoff, and the first black senator, Reverend Raphael Warnock, who, by the way, is the pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church, which was the home church in Atlanta of Martin Luther King, the church he was baptized in, grew up in, and later became the senior minister. Wow, what a container to hold up, yes? So I want us all to be emboldened. We all may not be working at a grand scale globally or nationally, but we each can hold out that container for both our personal lives and our collective lives. So let me talk a bit about how then we respond to the violence, for instance, that happened last week at our state capitol. It's so easy to blame, to hate back, to be nasty. And you know, what is called for here is love, what Heather sang about. A love like that can heal and bring in the light. In other words, it's fine to disagree with each other. It's fine to allow the justice process to go after the people that broke the law last week, and it's fine for them to be punished before their actions. What is not fine is for us to fuel hatred and fuel the fire more. We are called to notice, to have our own opinions, but to do this with compassion, to do this with love. That is a tall, tall order, but I think it is a very, very, very critical one right now. Ernest Holmes used to say, love points the way, law makes the way possible. The two aspects of the divine. Love, which is the impelling force, the active force. Law, which is the receptive, responsive force. But you know, at the end of his life, he shared with close friends that the one regret he had was that he didn't emphasize love more and law less. So I want to propose something this morning. I want to, first of all, remind us that we're called to embody that which we want to see. I love that quote from Gandhi. Be the change you want to see in the world. Just as our lives, again, are the perfect curriculum for what we need to heal personally, what is happening right now is the perfect view of what needs to be healed in our world. So we need to remember our oneness. We need not to be hate mongers. We need not to marginalize other people. Their actions, yes, but their being, no. Again, this is a tall, tall order. So one of the things we can do, I remember Dr. Linda talking about a practice she was doing, which is a death yoga practice, which is to breathe in the pain that's going on. There's a lot of it. There's a lot of it. I know a lot of us are feeling anxiety about what's going to happen this week for the inauguration, anxiety about a looming violent clash between our political factions in this country. So if you're willing with me to take a moment to just relax and breathe in. Breathe in the pain of the pandemic, the pain of those who have lost loved ones or businesses, livelihoods. Breathe in the pain of the violence that happened at the Capitol last week, the loss of lives. And breathe out love. That is a transforming process that we have at our fingertips. We can embody love. We can imagine that we're surrounded in love. So I want to speak a little more. I advise that, suggest that practice this week. But I'd like to talk a little bit about this idea of marinating in love. The reality is we do live and have our being in God, which is love, but we're not always aware of that. We're not always embodying it consciously. So let's think about marinating. When we marinate meat, what do? We put a tough piece of meat into the marinade, and the marinade works on the toughest parts of the meat, tenderizing it, creating space in it. The meat kind of surrenders to the marinade. The marinade is the active ingredients. It has control of the situation. And it transforms the meat. I think the same is true as we allow ourselves to marinate in divine love. The Bible tells us that God softens our hard hearts. This action of spirit, this action of breathing in pain and breathing out love and knowing that we are love and consciously allowing ourselves to be immersed in love, surrendering to divine love, allows us to tenderize our hearts, to be forgiving, to be compassionate with ourselves as well as with others. Now, the other thing that I'm aware of, because sometimes I run short on time, is when I go to make a recipe that calls for marinating meat and I haven't marinated the meat all night and I'm rats, I've got to try to do it quickly. So I throw it in the refrigerator for an hour or two and expect it to work. And it's not the same. It just isn't the same. So marinating in divine love takes surrender to divine love, opening our hearts so that they might be softened, but it also takes time. It's not a one-time thing. It's not a quick fix. It's a constant, daily practice of being aware that God is love. I am love. I am surrounded by love, and love is the truth of every other being on the planet, whether they're acting like it right now or whether they are not. So here's the question I'd like us to ask this week of ourselves. What is the consciousness I'm being called to embody in order to manifest what it is I want to see in my personal life, in our political life, in the life of our nation, and in the life of the world? What is the consciousness I'm called to embody? What is the solution we are called to be, like Gandhi said? Again, I know that this isn't easy. It's so easy to condemn and take sides and be polarized. But remember, the mold we hold up to the infinite is what we experience in our lives. The softer and more tender and more surrendered our hearts are, the more we are guided to what is it I can do? What small thing may I do? And if it's nothing else but something in consciousness, that we have compassion, that we're willing to listen, that we're willing to create a space where we can have dialogue in this country that is respectful, that is harmonious, and that goes off without violence, without condemnation, without name-calling. Out with the old and with the true. We are on the cusp of a whole new era here, a new administration, a new year, a new way of being called to look at our shadow, our part. How is it we've helped create what's going on? And how might we embody what it is we really want to see? So how big is the mold you're holding up of possibility of what this next year brings? A mental equivalent is the name that Holmes gave for it. A mental equivalent is the idea, the concept. When the Wright brothers were the first to fly, what had to come first was the mental equivalent of an airplane, the idea that that was possible. So like Martin Luther King, I hold out, and I would like us all to hold out, a world that works for all, a world where there's equity and justice, a world where everyone gets to vote, where everyone's vote is counted, that matters, a world where this democracy thrives and is healthy, embracing all views and able to exchange views and able to have a transfer of power that is peaceful, able to have 3 branches of government with a balance of power as the Constitution. We had the most brilliant forefathers, really. And I'd like to say 4 mothers and fathers that together have continued to plant seeds that allow the idea, the mold, to be filled with peace and justice and oneness for all. Let's go into prayer, my friends. I'm so grateful for the way God has shown up through so many beautiful leaders, and most specifically today I recognize Dr. Martin Luther King, who despite adversity and violence against his own people, hatred, constantly held up a cup that said nonviolence can make changes, that said all people can be treated equally, that we can walk hand in hand, that we can have a world of peace and goodness. I give thanks for all who have come after him, who have continued that dream, who have continued to hold up a cup of infinite space to hold what is possible from an infinite supply of good. I'm grateful to know that there is one life being lived as each one of us. It is a life, if we had to use words to describe it, that is love, that is peace, intelligence, harmony, goodness, freedom, and so much more. And so I know as each of us is willing to marinate in that divine love that is ever present, allowing it to tenderize our hearts, allowing it to guide us, surrendering to it, that anything is possible. Nothing is too good to be true. And the other piece I affirm today is our willingness to look at our own shadow side, the places where we're still not viewing, embodying love, allowing that each person is love incarnate no matter how they're acting. And so I pray for this nation, for the smooth transfer of power, for the continued participation of each person in this beautiful democracy that we were gifted, for its preservation, for its thriving. I pray to know that we continue on this path of recognizing the racial inequity and injustice that has existed, and that each of us clean up, wipe the slate clean in our own hearts regarding that issue, and that we continue to create a world where everyone has a voice, where everyone is free to experience goodness and life and justice and liberty. Because you know what? When everyone is allowed to play their part, we all benefit. I give thanks for this community, for each one watching, for our ministers, for our practitioners, for the crew that made this broadcast possible. And I bless each one who is dealing with COVID illness, family members who are suffering, each one who has been grieving the loss of life at our capital last week, each one who has turmoil in their hearts, knowing that as we breathe in, as we're willing to breathe in collectively that angst, that pain, we can breathe out love. We are love, breathing love out into love. We are marinating in divine love. In gratitude for this opportunity to share truths, to hear Heather's beautiful music and Dr. Linda's beautiful prayer, in gratitude to know these truths, in gratitude for what plants sprout now as we plant seeds of love, I release this word into the fertile soil of the law, knowing this prayer is answered, and we say together, and so it is. Amen. We go now again to Heather Hutton.
Endless spirit, no shape you can't fill, no end to the road, no time, limitless spirit, let's fly tonight. It's you and I. Into any crevice, any place, put a smile on someone's face. We can transform this whole human race when we dance with you. So let's dance on. So let's dance on, Spirit.
Thank you once again, Heather Hutton. It's the time in our service now where we focus on sacred giving. It's a spiritual practice that allows us to become conscious of all the good we receive and make a conscious decision to share a part of that good to the places where we are spiritually fed. So I invite you now to say aloud, if you will, our giving affirmation, which will be coming up on the screen in just a minute. And I don't have it in front of me. So let's see. Aha. I can't read it. Randy, can you feed it to me? Can you see it on the screen? No. Okay. Well, let's use the old one then, because I remember that one. Divine love as me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, and all that I choose to circulate. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over. And so it is. That new affirmation I have yet to memorize. There are several ways you can give to Center for Spiritual Living Rogue Valley. You can mail a check to CSL RV, P.O. Box 1458, Medford, Oregon, 97501. Or you can give your gift on our website, www.cslroguevalley.org. Hit the donate button. And we appreciate your gifts. We appreciate the good that is coming in that allows us to continue to offer all the things we do, which include, by the way, 3 connection calls during the week, 2 on week mornings, Monday and Wednesday morning at 9 a.m., 1 on Thursday afternoon, evening at 7 p.m. And if you'd like to sign up for our newsletter, you can do that on our Facebook page or by sending us an email at cslroguevalley@gmail.com. Let's see. Coming up, we have a meditation class, which starts January 21st with Reverend Michelle Arellano. Still time to register for that. And we have a community annual meeting coming up Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock on Zoom, January 31st, where we will be voting in new board members and just giving a State of the Union message, so to speak, where we've been this past year and where we are going. So that's it for announcements. We go back to Heather now for our closing song.
Thank you, Reverend Kimberly and Dr. Rippon, for those words of inspiration and remembering as we go into this week. I love that analogy of spirit being like iron, liquid, air, fitting any shape. I love it. I've been really with that these past few days. This is called Pour Yourself in Me by Ricky Byers. A lot of you probably know it. It's an agape song. I know we can't see and hear each other, but I want to feel you through that screen, dancing, singing, if you wish, wherever this finds you this morning. Pour yourself in me, Great Spirit. Pour yourself into my heart, wonderful Spirit. Pour yourself in me. Pour yourself into my heart. Whoa, wonderful Spirit. Pour yourself in me. Pour yourself into my heart. Whoa, wonderful Spirit. One more time. Pour yourself in me. Pour yourself into my heart. Whoa, wonderful Spirit. Pour yourself in me. Pour yourself into my heart. Whoa, wonderful Spirit. Oh, wonderful Spirit. Oh, wonderful Spirit.
So let's remember this week to marinate in divine love and to hold up. How big is your container? Hold up a huge cup to be filled with divine good, because the measure we hold up is the measure we receive. The law can only give us what it is we can conceive and believe. So we're off on a grand adventure this year, my friends. Blessings to everybody. Namaste.